is a Bramble Jam podcast.
Welcome to Girls Gone Hallmark, a Hallmark review podcast. I'm Megan, and I'm a longtime Hallmark fan.
I'm Wendy. I'm a former Hallmark hater.
Today, we're discussing Chicken Sisters, Episode 7. It's just junk, y'all. Alternate title, I Fall to Pieces, if you're keeping up with the two-title phenomenon happening. And I'm going to tell you, I kind of like the song title series that happens on the IMDb titles of these episodes. I can't help but wonder, did they just decide that's the way we do our titles for the way home and we can't repeat that? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Nevertheless, the Chicken Sisters does stream exclusively on the Hallmark Plus platform. You can find us in lots of places, not just exclusively in one. We'd love to have you follow us on Instagram. We have not one, but two Instagram accounts. They are, get ready, Girls Gone Hallmark and Megan and Wendy.
Hey, jump into our Facebook group, Girls Gone Hallmark. It's private and it's filled with amazing people who really know their stuff about Hallmark movies. So like if you ever had like just a random question, there are a lot of people there who will know the answer.
The Hallmark knowledge, there's a deep bench over there.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, we love your emails. You can email us girlsgonehallmark@gmail.com. And we'd like to discuss a little more feedback we've received since our last episode before we hop into our thoughts on this one. I had posed the question on the last episode, do we think Frank Jr. is abusive? And we both had said, maybe not. I mean, there's no evidence of being.
I said maybe not. I said
You
maybe.
said emotionally abusive.
Yeah.
Verbally abusive.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously no evidence of him being physically abusive. I was on the fence, but we got some feedback that suggests otherwise and wanted to share that perspective.
Yeah, the first one comes from a listener who wants to remain anonymous, and they write, yes, Frank Jr. is verbally and emotionally abusive. Amanda is stuck in an abusive relationship, and you can't always leave those kinds of relationships. And the scenes with Frank Jr. listening to the radio in his car are signs of underlying anger issues that could quickly lead to physical abuse. And then goes on to say, sorry, struck a nerve and had to get that out.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. I agree the scenes with him in the car are very troubling.
Yeah.
The way he reacts to this particular podcast, he is like seeking, what it seems to me is like he's seeking power from where he doesn't feel like he has it in his home. And so he's sourcing his power from this hard podcast.
Ugh, it's so gross to me.
So I do appreciate that perspective. Frank Jr. does not get any better in this episode, but before we talk details, let's hear a synopsis.
Sure. Despite their differences, the town rallies around Gus, Amanda, and May in a time of need. Meanwhile, Sabrina starts to doubt her tactics on Kitchen Clash.
A few news and notes about this episode. Episode 7 was written by Erin Gibson. Erin is a comedian, writer, podcaster, and director, known for her works on projects like Gay of Thrones for Funny or Die and Tiny Toons Looniversity. She also co-hosts a political comedy podcast called Attitudes that covers pop culture, women's rights, and LGBTQ plus issues.
Monica Mitchell directed this episode. She has 38 previous directing credits, including Virgin River, Firefly Lane, a couple of Hallmark movies, and 2 episodes of Date My Dad.
Heyo! Angela Sistio is the credited music supervisor for this episode. Shout out for using the song March of the Swivelheads, which was famously used in Ferris Bueller's Day Off and so perfectly used in this episode.
Didn't you think so? I know
Loved
you've
it.
seen that movie a lot.
Of course.
As soon as I heard it, I was like, oh my God. And oh my God, she's running the same way like Ferris Bueller. Like,
yes,
you know.
I loved it. The Gen X audience was like, brains exploding.
Totally. Drew Henderson plays Sheriff Lawrence. He has 18 acting credits, but is no stranger to Hallmark, having appeared in An Easter Bloom, Wedding Season, and The Wedding Cottage.
Before we run down the key events of this episode, we're going to take a quick break for an ad, and we'll be right back. This episode, unlike many past episodes, largely has one key plot point with a few little satellites orbiting around it, and that is dealing with Gus's home. We're dealing obviously with the aftermath here of Frank Jr. calling the health department.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I liked the parallel opening here where Frank Jr. is, I use liked loosely. In terms of the directing of it, I like Frank Jr. being passed out in the phone booth. We check in on where everyone is sleeping. It's kind of like the parade of the flowered pillowcases. Like we see Nancy and we see Gus, who has a quite serene sleeping situation in spite the chaos of the rest of her home. May and Jay sleeping in different beds. I like this way of checking in on them. But then my notes say, in all caps, WTF Amanda.
I have no words. I can't. I'm like beating a dead horse. And I know that there's listeners out there who disagree with me, but her choices are all wrong here.
Are we to believe that they slept together or just like, oh, they fell asleep in the bed of the truck making out?
I don't know. Did it lean one way or the other for you?
I mean, she's fully clothed. So I didn't feel like we were to infer that they had slept together, more that they just like had a moment and fell asleep. But They did move from the cab of the truck to the bed of the truck.
Maybe they were going to look at the stars.
Snuggle up under the blanket.
Look, I am too old. The thought of laying in the back of a truck bed, never.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to walk the next morning.
The next week. Come on. Come on. Yeah, I thought it was like a good opening where showing where everybody was at. And then, of course, like Amanda's like freak out, like, oh my God, what happened? I slept here all night long like a teenager. And her running home. The greatest thing, though, is like when Shauna pulls up and she's like, oh, no. Because she knows Shauna is going to like, Shauna knows all the dirt, obviously. And I think she thought like Shauna was coming with gossip about her and Sergio already.
Uh-huh.
But, turns out Shauna has information about the call to the health department. So I want to tell you, I'm going to stop here and tell you that I thought this episode was so much better than the last several episodes. I don't know if it's the writers. You know what I mean? Can I just say, like, when you have, and I don't know how common this is because I've never really looked at it that closely, but when you have a series and then you have different writers for each episode, that, like, I imagine it's probably hard to be cohesive in the storytelling.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if this is true. I think that some episodes are better than others, and I think it might have to do with the writers.
Yeah, I don't have any idea how that works. And I think it's probably show dependent, right? I think there's a very clear writing style that we see if we were to go back and look at each of these episodes. I like that we kind of dig in here on this one main plot point. We dig in on Gus's house. Obviously, this isn't something we could have done earlier in the season of this show, but some of these episodes, I like how fast-paced they are. We're jumping back and forth from storyline to storyline, but it can sometimes feel a little bit frantic. And so it was nice to slow down, zero in, focus on this one location and this one idea and how it's affecting everybody else for this one episode before we get to the episode 8 resolution.
Will there be resolution in episode 8?
I cannot figure out what is going to happen. My friend Karen listened to the audiobook of the Chicken Sisters. And so I was talking to her about the show, and she doesn't subscribe to Hallmark Plus. And she's like, well, I listened to the first couple of episodes of your podcast. She goes, I found the book frustrating to read, so I'm not sure that I want to watch the show. And she doesn't have Hallmark Plus anyway. But I've explained some of the changes to her, and she's like, yeah, I don't know how you reconcile that with the way the book ends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have no idea. I can't envision the ending. And I can't envision an ending because the book ends kind of in a harmonious place. And I don't see a harmonious ending for all of our players here.
Yeah, I think they're definitely hoping for a season 2.
For sure.
Yeah, because, I mean, you've told me what happens in the book, and I just can't see how that...
Definitely not.
It's not going to happen with one more episode left.
We, of course, spend a lot of time clearing out Gus's house. And I have to tell you, it stressed me out watching the very little bit of progress that seemed to be happening.
Oh, for sure.
And also, I was like, do y'all not have like a rubbish service in town you can call and be like, bring the biggest dumpster you have so we can load all of this up? You seem to know the sheriff's here, every single person in town is here, and you're just loading this all out onto the front lawn. I was like, get rid of it. Have a system. You guys are just moving shit around.
Yeah, that was frustrating. And I've watched a lot of like hoarder type shows before. And I think the process is probably slow moving because of the person who's, not dealing well with getting rid of the stuff. It's like a push and pull scenario. Yes, but in this episode, I was like, oh my God, pull a dumpster up and just start throwing shit into it because you have something bigger on the line here. She potentially could lose her business.
Yet, yes, look at the bigger picture. And particularly given that May had taken over and things were happening and moving. And yes, Gus was trying to slow the process down. It felt inefficient and it was frustrating to me. And I just imagined being in that situation, feeling overwhelmed. And spoiler alert, if you haven't read the book and you'd like to, tap forward 30 seconds. Gus does not burn her house down in the book. That is...
Oh, really?
That's a... yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a big shocking moment.
Interesting. That's very interesting news.
Can I tell you something I really loved about this episode?
Sure.
I love the growth we're seeing from Sabrina as a producer. One thing I was worried about coming into this show is Sabrina in the book is kind of nasty. Sabrina in the book never has like oh, maybe we're making gotcha television and I should rethink that. No. Sabrina just wants to produce the kind of show that's going to get people talking and going to catch people at their worst. There's scenes where they're almost like hijinksy, like hiding from Sabrina and like hiding behind the car so she doesn't see them get there. So she won't, you know what I mean? And in this, we'd see that in her in the beginning. But when the casting was announced and I was like, I love Rukia Bernard and I don't want to root against her for an entire season. And so one of the best surprises has been that Sabrina's character is so fun. But in this episode where we see that she makes the decision to not use personally damaging footage, I like that growth.
I do too. I thought that was a really good scene when May comes to her and like basically begs her and says like, please don't do it. And she's like, I didn't. It's fine. Like,
yeah.
I love Sabrina. I think I love Rukia Bernard.
For sure. Yeah.
I think I love her more. Like, I don't know what it is. She brings a really nice warmth to that character who I can see being like very nasty.
Yeah, they could have gone several different ways.
Yeah. And I thought it was really funny when she has like an issue in her hotel room and she got all like gussied up for Gruster and it wasn't him who
where's Gruster?
I think it's funny and I hope to see more from that if there is a season 2.
Yeah, more Gruster, please. A couple other little moments. We don't get a lot of resolution on this. This is one of like, before Sabrina kind of has her light bulb moment, Lindsay is the one who's like, Mom, this is not cool. And Sabrina's like, what are you talking about? Like, you're just hanging out with her because I made you. And of course, Frankie runs away hurt. I don't think there's any resolution on the Frankie and Lindsay friendship because I do think they began as like a here, I'll pay you if you can have your phone back or whatever it was if you go hang out with this girl. But it seemed like they had developed a genuine friendship.
Yeah.
That kind of broke my heart a little bit. And then Sabrina was like, oh, if my kid is saying like, this isn't cool, I maybe need to rethink the way I'm doing my job.
Yeah, totally.
And then the May and Jay of it all.
How awesome is Jay?
I know. I just love him.
Well, I've been saying for weeks, like, I really like May, and I think May has grown the most. Jay is just so understanding, and she had nothing to be afraid to tell him.
Yeah, he
like,
really, he's like,
none of these things matter to him, you know?
yes. And he takes it all in, and she's like, you know, you're not mad that I lied to you for the entire, he's like, well, I don't love that. But, you know, it wasn't the content of the lie that he was bothered by.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about the scenes? There were a couple of really great scenes, I thought, when Gus and Sergio talk and they're sitting outside of her house while people are cleaning it up. And she shares how, like, she grew up in that house and how it was wonderful. And, like, how, you know, after her mom died, all the stuff, like, made her feel safe, and how she was feeling regretful and wished for a do-over. And Sergio tells her it's never too late. I just thought it was so nice. Like, I think you need people in your life to reassure you that, like, hey, you're not a terrible human, and whatever changes you want to make, it's never too late. I just thought it was a really, really good scene.
Yeah, I like that she acknowledged, like, you know, I was hurt, and in return, I hurt my girls too.
Yeah.
And I think that is such an important lesson. Like, okay, it's been bad. And it came from this. These were your reasons. This is how you reacted to it. But you still have whatever the rest of your life looks like. And why not change it to be the life that you want? And then burning it all to the ground is such like a beautiful, visible metaphor for starting over.
That scene when she burns her house down, I was like, whoa. I thought it was so good.
I thought it was so good too. I'm spoiling one of my Cluckworthy moments because it was shocking to me as a person who's read the book. And I think, like we said, like, things have to change. Like, you need a big, shocking shake-up moment, and we cannot just clean up this mess and start over. Like, you do need to burn it to the ground and start fresh with your relationships, with the way you live your life, with all of the secrets. We do see Frankie find that letter addressed to Mimi.
Yeah.
And we don't see the resolution of that either, where she's going to take that.
Yeah, question. So she's going through all that stuff, and she sees that letter to Mimi from 1912. I paused the TV. I read the letter. It says something like, whoever wrote it was like, I'm not in a place to be a father. And then, like, Frankie looks like she has some sort of realization and, like, takes off. But I was like, what happened? What's the realization here? What does the letter mean? Do you have any insight?
Well, you know, at the very beginning of the series, we're told that, like, the feud stems from the fact that, like, Franny's husband had an affair with Mimi, but nobody ever knew if that was true. And then we learn, like, okay, so who is related to whom now in the Franny's and Mimi's world, right?
Right.
I'm curious to see the resolution of that letter. I'm curious to see if Nancy pulls her head out of her ass and stops defending and supporting her son.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. When she confronts Amanda about, have you been disloyal to Frank Jr.? And Amanda basically, like, doesn't confirm, but says, like, he's been disloyal to all of us. And I'm like, it's just, I need that to end. Nancy's such a disappointment to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I just need that storyline to, like,
I don't envy Nancy's position. I don't envy being in a place where you're like, your kid sucks, and now all you want is for them to be the kind of man that you believed your husband to be. Although obviously it's pretty clear that that's not who he was, but you believed him to be like a good man who was worthy of respect. He took Frank Jr. to work and was trying to take him under his wing, and Frank Jr. disappointed him. He's like, well, you're out. That's it.
Yeah.
So the more we learn about Frank Sr., the less there is to like about him. But Come on, Nancy. It just, as you said before, someone needs to shake her.
Yeah, totally. When is that going to happen, or if it's going to happen? I don't know. I have no idea. Of course, the episode ends, the house burning, and Gus collapses, and we are finally getting to her health issues. Finally. I thought it was a good ending, though.
Me too. What I was going to say is, in spite of the fact that we've been hinting at her health issues all season long, I was mostly able to forget about that in this episode because it wasn't addressed. Our attention wasn't drawn to it. So it is a shocking moment when she passes out in front of the girls.
Mm-hmm. It was good. All right. Are you ready for click-worthy moments?
I am.
Go ahead.
Well, we've discussed it already, but the ending scene with the fire and the collapse was great.
Yes.
But another scene that I really liked is the scene where Shauna arrives to tell Amanda about the health department call. Her character displays such emotional range in that scene. She starts with a very Shauna style story, and then she softens when she breaks the news that the health department has been called, and then jump to them in the car where Amanda's like, you can't tell anybody about this. And she's very sincere when she says, like, of course she won't. But then, of course, immediately into a joke about the next drop being a year away anyway. I think it's great. I really love the character of Shauna.
I love Shauna, too. I was thinking about, is Amanda and Shauna supposed to be best friends?
I don't know that Amanda has a best friend.
Well, my thought was like, oh, here, Shauna is running to tell Amanda about the health violation, but Shauna didn't tell Amanda about Frank Jr. and his vasectomy. You know what I mean?
I don't get the impression they're supposed to be best friends. They're coworkers. And I think in this moment, she was like, Amanda needs to know this information.
Got it. One of my click-worthy moments was, and it has to go back to the writing, but Amanda goes to Gus and tells her about the health violation. And Gus says, Mimi's is cleaner than a stripper pole on a Monday.
I want a collection. Yeah, I want a collection of these Southern one-liners that we get in this series.
So funny. Very funny.
My final Cluckworthy moment is the scene where there's a little bit of a role reversal where Amanda comes to May. May's having a bit of a panic attack in the mess, and Amanda comes to her rescue for once and talks her through it. And I appreciated that May, May's been the one helping everyone along since she was a child, and she had someone do that for her.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too. Did you like when May would to deal with what she was dealing with, go into her sparkle host?
100%. I thought it was A, really funny, and B, have you ever I'm just going to pretend that someone can see me and I'm going to do this at romanticizing your own life. You're like, I'm going to wash the dishes as if someone's recording.
Yes,
I totally get it.
One time when I had this job and we used to, it's so stupid. I can't even believe I'm but we had key cards to get into the behind the doors. And I would pretend I was on Alias, that show Alias. So just trying to get through the workday.
Whatever it takes.
So stupid.
That's so funny.
I can't believe I admitted that.
Who's your feathered friend of the week?
It is Gus, actually.
Oh.
I thought it was quite moving that she finally realized what was most important to her, and that was her girls, and that she just needed to do something different about it. So I thought that was really good.
Yeah, I think that's a great choice. Mine is Jay, simply for the introduction of a new character who's a real soft side of this show that we've been needing. It just made me feel warm and fuzzy and comfy and happy for May that she has someone like that. Hey friends, thank you for listening to this episode of Girls Gone Hallmark, a Bramble Jam podcast. We will be back tomorrow with our review of Wedding Crashers, and of course next week with our final review of The Chicken Sisters. Keep up with our schedule of episodes available in the show notes of this episode and at our website, girlsgonehallmark.com. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, friends, before we go, just a quick heads up. You're about to hear some ads. These little gems help us keep the show running and the Hallmark love flowing. So do with that info what you will. Grab a snack, hit the skip button, or maybe, just maybe, listen in and discover your new favorite product. Bye.